Hi, this is Rosenberg. Welcome to my latest YouTube video and podcast. Today I'm going to talk about the subtle signs that you need to look for in order to spot a narcissist. First, I should say it's not difficult to spot a narcissist when they are openly grandiose. And I'm talking about people who have narcissistic personality disorder. They tend to be in your face, grandiose, which is they think that they're bigger than life, more important than other people, think that their mistakes don't matter, think that their contributions are bigger and have more impact than they really do, and think that they have more charisma and more appeal than reality can account for. So the grandiosity part of narcissists usually is what you'll see that usually identifies them. Another identifying clue is their entitlement. They think that the world owes them, that they should have special consideration, special access, get special favors. There's something inherently good about them that makes them better than others, that they should have a waiter, a waitress, someone at a store immediately attend to their needs without hesitation. And should they not, adding to their grandiosity, they're going to get mad, upset, make a complaint. That's entitlement. And then you have the vanity of feeling so strong about your level of attractiveness and appeal and the need to make sure that you maintain this level of beauty, this level of attractiveness. And for some, they become obsessed with it. It's like they're always looking in the mirror, whether they're actually looking in the mirror or they're talking about themselves. And there's so many more other signs and symptoms of pathological narcissists that I've talked in both of my books, The Human Magnet Syndrome and The Codependency Revolution. But today's video or podcast is about the subtle signs that you would miss. These are the narcissists who might have narcissistic personality disorder and might not even be a covert narcissist, but are slick, smooth, and able to present themselves in a manner that engenders respect, appreciation, special favors. I like to distinguish between a covert narcissist and just a slick operator, who's someone who's able to look normal, seem very likable, but not have the sociopathic background. But first, let me talk about briefly what a covert narcissist is. A covert narcissist has narcissistic personality disorder, got all the symptoms that apply to this disorder, which you can see all the symptoms in the DSM-5, or otherwise known as the Diagnostic Statistics Manual, version 5. They have all the telltale signs of narcissism, and they have sociopathic traits. They can lie with ease. They have little to no empathy or remorse. They are tricky, deceitful. They can be a con man. They can be a complete manipulator. So what I'm saying is I'm going to talk about pathological narcissists or people with narcissistic personality disorder who might not be a covert narcissist and still will be hard to spot. So what are the subtle signs of a narcissist? The first thing is confidence that does not fit the environment or the situation. They enter conversations and start talking confidently, boastfully about what they know and how well they know something, how well they can do something, a skill, an ability, a job. They come across really confident. Now, just to be clear, confidence is not narcissistic. No way. It's a good thing. But the subtle clue for a pathological narcissist is someone who is abruptly confident. The confidence doesn't really quite fit the situation. There are other people present. They feel compelled to explain why they are good at something and why they are better. And it doesn't quite feel like it fits the situation or the conversation. Perhaps their self-aggrandizement or their self-bragging is just a little bit over the top. It might not fit the grandiose narcissist or the one that is kind of lost in themselves and has no ability to understand how people are getting annoyed and don't like them. The narcissist who is subtle about bragging, about extolling their skill set and their abilities, they're going to be slick, and it often will fit in with the conversation. But there will be a feeling. Sometimes you'll feel it in your gut, and you got to trust that. Pathological narcissists, if you are tuned in or have narcissist radar, you'll feel it. They'll be bragging just a little bit too much. They will be reacting to what other people say and feel like they have to equal it. Which brings me to the second one, a need to compete to the detriment of those around them. So if you are in a conversation with a group of peers and one person is talking about something that they did really well at work, got a bonus, got a promotion, discovered something, wrote something, a subtle clue for a narcissist who's not overt is that they're going to push the conversation towards them and turn the conversation around to what they can do and how they can do it. The clue is they're comparing themselves to the other person. They're just not acting bizarre, over the top, grandiose, entitled. These individuals are almost always chiming in to what others say good about themselves, perhaps where other people have visited. So you're sitting at a coffee shop with a bunch of friends and a person talks about their trip to the Greek islands. Well, all of a sudden, this narcissist, who might not be pretty obvious to others, is talking about his or her trips, maybe not to Greece, but to somewhere else. Another subtle sign is defensiveness. To differentiate the subtle narcissist to the grandiose, stereotypical narcissist, a narcissist who is corrected or given contrasting or differing opinions about what they say will have a narcissistic injury, and they'll get mad, and they'll sometimes, pout or react with anger or defensiveness or shut down. But the one who's going to give you a subtle clue, who you might miss if you're not careful, is the one who is going to look like they have to convince you that maybe you're wrong or mistaken. They're not going to be angry and defensive overtly, but they're going to start a conversation that by the time it's finished, whether it's circuitous and long and kind of meandering or right to the point, is going to prove that the way they look at something is more correct than the way that you look at it. But they don't look overtly narcissistic. They don't interrupt. They're not rude. They find a pause in the conversation. They wait for the perfect transitional point, and now they start talking about their point of view. They won't demean directly the person speaking, but ultimately, by the time they're finished with whatever they have to say, that person who they're comparing themselves to does not stack up, does not compete with what they know or what they can do. It's subtle. Sometimes it comes through the subtle clue of a compliment. Now, this might sound paradoxical. A person that compliments you, well, how could that be a narcissist? Well, what about the person that understands the social rules, the psychology of conversation? And they know very well that if they should openly challenge or disagree with you, it'll look like it's being argumentative or competitive. But what happens if they're very charming and they're very coy and they bring up a question and they act like, well, have you ever thought of it this way? Which seems normal to me, right? But then they go into what they think about, which actually demeans what the other person is thinking about, because it goes in direct contrast with everything that person is saying without being insulting, without making themselves look like they're trying to be better. It looks like this. Hey, Sam, that's impressive. Wow, I can't believe you got a grant for your chemistry work. That's really cool. That reminds me. The same thing happened to me. Oh my gosh. And then they go into their story about why they are special, why they got recognized, why they received that honor. And they go into it in depth. And it's no longer about Sam, the person who started the conversation. It's about them. But the subtle narcissist is going to compliment Sam, is going to smile, and it's going to say what seems to be supportive statements, comments, or even facial expressions. But their words are about them. The subtle narcissists look like, seem like, sound like they have empathy and they care. These are folks that probably have read a book that was written in the 1930s. It was called How to Make Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. The rules on how to get people to feel comfortable, how to make people want to like you, want to communicate with you. They're very easy. They're very clear. And I recommend the book to anyone. But the subtle narcissist, they're going to seem like they're very interested in you. They're going to ask you questions. They're going to call you by your first name. They're going to smile and look impressed as you talk about yourself. They're going to set a foundation where it looks like they really care about what you have to say and are interested in what you have to explain or what you're trying to communicate. But then there's a shift, and the shift is very subtle. Then they start talking about themselves in comparison to you, and then it becomes this one-track, narrowly focused diatribe, this conversation that is self-aggrandizing, that is bragging, but it's subtle. And they keep going back and saying nice things about you, and how they respect you and admire you. That is the subtle narcissist way of hiding that they really think they're smarter, but showing you that they care and they have empathy when they're just going through the signs. They're just going through the motions. They're faking it. Subtle narcissists have perfected the empathetic response. They know how to communicate how they feel badly for you, about you, or a situation you're talking about, how they can imagine what it's like to be you and to struggle, what it's like to be you and have these pains, or what it's like to be anyone who is having a hard time or is involved in something that's very difficult and sometimes painful. They know the words. They can reflect back just like a therapist who is taught in graduate school. They can master reflective statements. They can sympathize with you in ways that sound so real. They know how to say, wow, that must have been so difficult. I could only imagine. You are awesome. You are truly strong. You must be very lonely. You must be upset. They know how to use empathetic statements and how to look like they care and they're full of empathy. But the subtle clue is it's superficial. If you should want to talk about it and say how much you're struggling, and they're in the conversation, they're going to turn it back to themselves. And it won't be this sharp right turn, you, them. It's going to be a curve. They're going to talk about you, show empathy. And next thing you know, they're going to extol themselves and what they are and how they have suffered similarly and overcome the pain. And then start to talk about their difficulties. There will be this subtle transformation into them and what is hurting and why they need sympathy and empathy and how they have struggled. So it's no longer a true empathy. It's a chance to talk about their problems and to show people that they are a victim who has overcome problems or a victim who perpetually needs to be recognized and be given special treatment or special accommodations. Subtle narcissists can express emotions. They can very clearly express loneliness, sadness, powerlessness. They can do it with such articulation that it sounds like they are so healthy and so self-aware. But it really is a chance just to talk about themselves and their struggles, usually at the expense of another person. They're trying to show that they're better than someone. They are trying to show that they're worthy of something that most people don't recognize. They are trying to show that they are victimized or hurt. But the way they express their emotions and the fluency of how they do it is sometimes remarkable. It sometimes makes a person say, wow, this person is really healthy or really has this progressed and tuned in understanding of feelings. But what they're not understanding is that it's all about them. Their attunement to themselves and how they feel and what happens when they're hurt and their expression of being hurt. Often it might sound like, well, they're in therapy and they've made great progress. Look at them. They are so articulate about their feelings and they ask for what they want. But the subtle clue is it's not reciprocal. It's not mutual. They talk about themselves, but when you or another person starts to talk, their interest trails off. They look at you intently with a smile and they look like they're hanging on to every word you're saying, but really have no interest. And that brings me to another subtle clue. The narcissist who looks so interested in what you have to say and is looking at you, and it looks like they're hanging on every word. You know, they're nodding, they have all the body movements and the facial expressions of someone who is very interested. But then they kind of trail off. You can look at their face. It looks like they're daydreaming. They're smiling, but you can tell they're not listening anymore. And you have to pay attention because the clues are subtle. And then they will come back and they will act as if they've been following the whole time. And often you can tell this because they miss parts of the conversation. They miss parts of the story. And they say things that show they weren't listening, but will apologize, say, oh, sorry, I was distracted. It's just a genuine looking, sometimes intense look of interest, but it is artificial and superficial and can easily be spotted if you start to ask questions or just dig a little bit deeper into the person who seems interested and find out that they were not listening. Another subtle clue is the hero. It's the person who has stories of how they've overcome adversity and conquered stressful, difficult, demeaning situations that most people would not. They talk about it and as if they're a victim and the people around them, which can be a supervisor, it could be a team, it can be a company. They are the one that is being subjugated, one who is being treated unfairly, one who's subject to prejudice, racism, anti-Semitism. And they look hurt and they look sensitive. But the stories repeat themselves. Now, someone who brings up that topic isn't necessarily narcissistic. They could be suffering from something that was unfair or hurtful, but there is a pattern. If you know this person, you have been hanging around them, you will see that they tend to tell stories that make them into the poor, pitiful victim and the people hurting them as these bad, despicable, unlikable individuals. It's a pattern. Another subtle clue sometimes looks like ADHD, where they act as if, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. I'm sorry, I was distracted. Or I'm sorry, I have ADHD. Some people do have ADHD, and it is difficult to keep track of what people are saying. Sometimes you have like thoughts that kind of distract you, especially when someone is talking, and you kind of lose track of what someone is saying. And you have to like ask them questions that a person who was not, or a person who is not ADHD would not do. But the subtle narcissist does that all the time. He will ask questions about something you've already provided answers to and descriptions to. He will act as if he doesn't know something that you have described and said. And they will be apologetic and they will look embarrassed, but it's a pattern. It's a pattern that might look normal, but if you are looking for those subtle clues, you're going to see them. You're going to recognize the narcissist who is pretending. Another subtle clue that someone is a narcissist is the way they talk about their family, the way they talk about their parenthood. They are very proud of their achievements and they talk about their children in ways that some people would think are good. Some people think, wow, it's so cool that he brags about his child. He's always talking about his child, his academics. But the stories really are about him. When I saw Billy at Little League and he got this home run, oh my gosh, it reminded me how important it was that I pushed pressure on him to practice and how I coached him. Or if Janie gets A's in math, about how Janie is the next generation of mathematical geniuses, such as himself. These are the subtle narcissists that brag about their children, but really it either is directly or circuitously about themselves. It comes around eventually to them and what they did and why they deserve praise. Something else to think about is the narcissist who is emotionally expressive, has very, very clear understanding of how to express and communicate their emotions. It hurts me, Joe, when you don't ask me about how my day was and you talked about your day. It makes me feel unimportant. Well, on the surface, well, that can look good. That can look like someone's healthy. But the pattern is there. It's that person, the subtle narcissist, is demonstrating their hypersensitivity as minor and hidden narcissistic injuries. They are talking about how they get upset and how they're disappointed or saddened. And it's about how people treat them or don't treat them and them being ignored or being victimized. So what seems like this person who's very articulately talking about their feelings, but really is obsessed with their feelings of being hurt, misunderstood, lonely. It's about them. Another subtle narcissist clue is saying you're sorry. Now, these clues all probably seem like examples of what on the surface looks like healthy individuals, people with self-awareness. They can pretend to be and seem healthy, but it's all superficial. It's a veneer. So if they make a mistake and someone lets them know, the subtle narcissist is not going to be proactive and apologize for a mistake until they can see another person is upset. So their apology, their ownership of the problem on the surface looks healthy, but it's surface level. They are making sure that they're not in trouble. They're making sure that there's not going to be a consequence for what they did badly, wrong, or inappropriately. They are protecting themselves from the reactions people have from their narcissism by pretending to be open, sincere, apologetic. Again, on the surface, that's going to look really healthy. It's going to look normal. But if you stand back and you look at the patterns and you look at what this person does most of the time, it is not reflective of someone who really cares, who has sincere empathy. They're trying to dig themselves out of something that might have a consequence or get them in trouble. Think about this. Here's another one, is a narcissist that smiles and has this bright, loving, kind smile that looks calm and relaxed and looks like they care, that they're exuding with sensitivity and connection. But in other situations, when they're not in public or you see them interacting with other people, they get reactive and they get mad and they have sharp, pointed narcissistic injury reactions. But when they're in the group of people or they're with you and they're faking or being a subtle narcissist, they're putting on the act of normality, the act of strength, the act of being honorable. So keep your eyes open. It's not always the con man that's going to get you, the covert narcissist, the person who's a sociopath. There are narcissists that really understand human behavior, human interactions, understand how to connect or how to show human traits when not actually having them. There are many more clues of what I would call subtle narcissists. But I want to end by reminding you that I am not talking about a covert narcissist. I'm talking about someone who has narcissistic personality disorder, but has learned tricks, strategies, modes of communication, and other distracting and sometimes deceptive ways to hide their narcissism by acting normal and healthy. I'll repeat it, by pretending or acting normal and healthy. But you have to keep this all in context and analyze it within a broader pattern of who they really are and how they can consistently be in a relationship and show sincere empathy, regard to other, respect and regard to other people's feelings and thoughts. Not reactive, not proactive, not over the top, not artificial. So I hope this little discussion helped you. And if you're interested in more of my work, especially my treatment program for people who have codependency or self-love deficit disorder, it's called the Self-Love Recovery Treatment Program, just drop me a line at help@selfloverecovery.com or go to our website at selfloverecovery.com. Also consider my Patreon program. So be well and take care.